Welcome to Andy's Kitchen Sink chapter. Now, why do I call it that? Well, this is a fundamental course on Adobe Illustrator, so there are things we're not going to cover. They fall under headings like intermediate, advanced, or like wow, uber advanced kind of things. But a fundamental course to me is very important because it sets your feet on the ground, puts them on the path, and allows you to go forward. It's like you're on a nature walk going down a trail, but you're on the trail now. I helped you get on the trail, and it's up to you to continue walking down there. This chapter is just some things, some lessons, that basically I just want to make you curious about some of the other things that are available in this program. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the envelope distort features. Now, we have talked about those before for making warp. We'll talk about that again quickly and go through the other two. There's 3 different envelope distorts. So envelope.ai is the document that I have open. And I'm on the word awesome right here in this top layer. The other 2 right here will turn on later. Envelope distorts allow us to distort things, and they do it by creating an invisible envelope to distort the shape in. Now, in some cases, they make it, and actually at the end, my favorite, which is make with top mesh, we make the shape and distort based on that. Let's start with make with warp. And like I said, we've actually talked about this one before. So I've got awesome right here, and that's text. Doesn't have to be text. It can be any vector object. Go up to the word object on the pull-down menu and go down to Envelope Distort, Make with Warp, and you will see, well, this. You get all these different ways to make with warp. You can go horizontal, vertical. We can stretch and bend, horizontal, vertical, distortion. Let's go into, say, a rise, and we can change the bend and the horizontal and vertical. The cool thing about doing this with text, if you can kind of get it right, is it draws and attracts attention. When you're doing artwork, if you go to a class, most of the time the instructor is going to tell you that as we look at something, we find things of interest that move us from point to point in the artwork. And something like distorted text might help draw the eyes to a place that as the designer, I want your eyes to be. That might be one reason you use this. The other one might be that you can. Let's click OK. Now, this is non-destructive. In other words, basically what I have here can be changed even if it's next month. It's non-destructive editing. If we go back to the word object on the pull-down menu and go down to envelope distort again, you do have a release function, an expand, and an edit contents. Now, if you choose edit contents, we could rename it. If you don't like the word awesome, we could put another word in there, change its color, things like that, edit the contents. If you release it, let's do that one next. If you go to release, you're saying, I wish I had not done this. Give me back my object or my word, and it will. But it will also show you the shape that it used to make that happen. And let me go ahead and do this. Let me just select that and move it out. And you can see it. There it is. So it made that shape based on what I chose. I think it was called rising. So it made it, and whatever went into that object fit that shape. Let me go ahead and undo and take it back the way it is. The other one up here, and let me go down here, is called expand. Now what expand does is it converts the image into objects. So it's not text anymore. It may look like it, but it isn't. And it also takes it and makes it permanent. Now you might want to do this in cases where you're having difficulty moving it someplace else, like maybe to a 4-color press or something, where they need to expand it to make it work correctly. And 9 times out of 10, if you are having trouble with printing something like this, you could do this. But don't forget, this is now permanent. I mean, I can press undo because I'm still in the system and I have that ability. But if I save the file, reopen it, that's gone. So don't expand it out unless you really know what you're doing in terms of where you want it to go and you don't want to come back to it because that boat will have sailed. Okay, that's the first one. Let's turn that one off and go into the next make with mesh. So I have a pleasant looking cat right here. It looks like he just ate the canary. Let's go ahead and select him. He is a whole bunch of stuff, a couple of dozen pieces actually. Go up to the word object, go down to envelope distort and select make with mesh. Now the mesh is like a grid. How many rows and columns do you want? The more you have, the more individualistic controls you can do, but it does make it more complicated. Let's leave it at 4 and 4. Click OK. Now, pick up your direct selection tool right here, and then choose which one you want to distort, like say this one right here. And I'll just actually literally pull it up. Now, even though this is a whole bunch of pieces, as you can see, basically it is distorting it as a whole. Come over here maybe, and how about doing something like that? Oh yeah. I'm going to take these three by grouping them, or by selecting them this way, and then marqueing them actually, and then maybe pull those down. We've turned the nice cat into a really weird looking cat. It will work with any vector, not raster, any vector objects, and the mesh can be as complicated as you want it to be. Third one's kind of my favorite. Let's come over here and turn this one off and turn this one on. This one is make with top object. Now let's start with an object that's already drawn, the star, and the word star. Now the only thing you have to remember is, if you are going to use this, this needs to be on top. That's it. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my regular selection tool, because this down here is a group. And just to prove a point here, it is indeed on top. They don't even have to be next to each other. It knows what to do. But you can see it's on top. If it isn't on top, go to the word object on the pull-down menu and go down to Arrange and say Bring to Front, and it will be on top. Now the next step, very easy. Go ahead and select it. Come up here to the word object and go down to Envelope Distort, and our third one, make with top object. Now check this out. It's kind of neat. It actually takes the star, or the word star I should say, puts it into the envelope of the star, and then the star actually goes away. Now it's still there. We can release it, we can expand it, whatever we want to do. It's still non-destructive editing. Now over here, I got my ATM dudes. Okay, that's very classic Illustrator artwork. I'm going to pick up my ellipse tool. Let me get right about here and draw an ellipse. I think I'll do a circle. I'll hold the Shift key down. I'm holding the Option key, and that is the Option key on a Mac, Alt key in Windows, and the Shift key. And so I'm drawing something like that. Doesn't matter the color. Don't worry about that. Now, come over here, pick up your selection tool, and let's see if we can grab all those guys like that. Now watch this. Object, Envelope Distort, make with top object. Isn't that cool? Makes it look like it's being viewed through a fisheye lens or whatever. The distortion is based on the shape. So in the first one, we're using predefined shapes. Actually, predefined envelopes, that's what they're called. In the second one, we used a grid, and we distorted the shape based on the grid. And in this one, we actually made our own shapes and distorted based on our very own shapes. And the shape can be anything you want it to be. Now, if we go to this one, let me show you one more thing. If we go back up to the word object, you do have under Envelope Distort, Envelope Options, and we haven't looked at those yet. The options are, let me move this over. Number one, you have an anti-alias right here, which does help things smooth out, look a little bit more natural. In this case, kind of hard to see if anything's even happening, but anti-aliasing. Your preserve settings are clipping mask or transparency. Most of the time, you're probably going to use clipping mask because it does work well better with other applications, but you could try one or the other. Fidelity is how close the shape works in terms of how many points it has to make it. So if I pull fidelity all the way this way, watch the shape. See it changed? If I go the other way, it's going to look more like the word star. It's got more points in it. That's what fidelity is. And we can distort the appearance. You can distort linear gradients if you want to, or distort patterns if you have any. Envelope options. Well, there you go. The envelope distort features, like I said, have been there for years. They really have. But they're kind of fun to work with. Don't use them because you can. To me, I use them to attract people to certain areas of my artwork, especially if I'm working with text. And make sure it's still readable, too. That would be nice. Envelope distort.